Hey guys, tonight we wander into a garden so old, even the stars above seem to pause and listen. The moon hangs like a silver fruit over beds of blossoms that never sleep. You walk slowly through the hush of petals, each one tilting toward the sky like it's waiting for a message. The air is cool, rich with the scent of wet stone, and something faintly sweet, like honey spilled on clay. Somewhere in the distance, a frog croaks once and then thinks better of it. The night is still. They say the Aztecs grew flowers not just for beauty or for ritual, but to predict the rain. Yes, really. And tonight, you're going to find out how. But fair warning, this might be the softest apocalypse you've ever heard. Between fragrant oracles and moody weather gods, you might not survive the hour without melting into your pillow. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is. Always love seeing the night unfold around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You enter the garden with bare feet, and it feels like stepping into memory. The soil is soft, warmer than you expected, as if it's been saving the sun's last breath. Around you, flowers bloom in strange and structured rows, clusters of yellow, red, and purple set in geometric designs that don't just please the eye, but speak in code. You touch the nearest one, a sochit, they call it, petals like brushed velvet, vibrating faintly in the breeze. If this were a modern setting, you might assume someone arranged them to go viral on social media, #gardengoals, or some niche aesthetic-coded chaos. But no, this was sacred horticulture, and it had a purpose. The Aztecs believed the gods could be read through color, scent, and direction. Each plant had meaning, each blooming a message. Rain, drought, fertility, war, you name it. It's like astrology, if astrology were also a botanical manual and occasionally required a human heart. But don't worry, we're strictly in the flower zone tonight, PG-13 prophecy only. A whisper of wind brushes your shoulder, and the petals respond. You notice they aren't all open in the same way. Some tilt east, others close slightly, as if afraid of something in the air. The night is dry now, but these flowers, they're not fooled. Historical records describe Aztec nobles commissioning entire gardens dedicated to weather signs. These weren't random flower beds, they were living maps. Grown along solar and lunar alignments, observed at sunrise and dusk, marked by ritual. Priests would walk them slowly, like you are now, reading them like books whose letters are made of scent and movement. It's weirdly relaxing, isn't it? Until you realize you're in a world where a late blooming might mean famine. And that's not even the weirdest part. According to one friar's chronicles, some Aztecs swore that during certain omens, the flowers would hum. Not metaphorically, literally, vibrating at the edge of hearing, as if tuned to some hidden frequency of the gods. Of course, modern historians still argue about this. Was it real? A trick of wind? Or maybe just some poor apprentice with too much cactus juice and not enough supervision? You kneel beside a square plot of blooming Xochitl, dark flowers used to measure the mood of Tlaloc, the rain god. Their petals shine in the moonlight like obsidian scales. Some are curled inward, others stretch wide. The pattern isn't random. The priest watching them would record not just what bloomed, but how it bloomed. Direction, tilt, number of petals, all clues. Modern ethnobotanists think some of this may have been practical. Flowering cycles do respond to humidity, temperature, and barometric pressure. Maybe the priests were early meteorologists in feathered robes, or maybe they were just very enthusiastic gardeners with divine ambition. But as you look closer, you spot something unusual. One flower among them, the smallest, tilts neither toward the stars nor the east. It tilts toward you. You blink. That's probably fine. Probably. In a far corner of the garden, a low drumbeat echoes once, so soft it might have just been your own heartbeat in rhythm with the earth. And suddenly, the flowers seem to lean a little closer. This place isn't just a garden, it's a calendar, a cathedral, a library of petals. And like any good library, it has its rules. Some say only those with the right breath could read the signs. That even walking among the sacred flowers without preparation could confuse the omens. That the gods didn't take kindly to interference. Oh, anyway, no pressure. The wind shifts again, and a new scent rolls over you, spicy, musky, like crushed marigold and rain on stone. Somewhere deep in the garden, water drips, one drop, then another. You don't know it yet, but the flowers have already answered the question no one asked aloud. Will it rain tomorrow? And in their silent, blooming language, they say yes. You follow the scent. It twists like a ribbon through the garden, weaving between beds of sleeping blossoms and narrow paths laid with flat volcanic stone. With every step, the perfume grows stronger. Incense, you realize now, thick and ancient. Copal resin. The smell is almost chewy, like warm tree sap lit on fire by time itself. Your footsteps lead you toward a shrine hidden behind a curtain of vines. It's a small structure, nothing grand, just a carved platform wrapped in feathers, jade beads, and folded cloths dyed with crushed cochineal. But this is where the real weather work happens. This is where the rain gods are asked questions no forecast app can answer. You kneel, quietly, respectfully, even though your knees complain like you're 50 years older. The shrine bears the stylized face of Tlaloc, wide eyes, fangs, and the classic goggle-eye expression of someone who has just realized they left the rain on. The god of rain, fertility, and mountains, but also lightning and floods. A complicated fellow, really. And tonight, he's watching you. Aztec priests once stood exactly where you are now, before the face of Tlaloc, burning offerings and interpreting the will of the skies. But here's the fun twist. They didn't just ask the clouds, they asked the flowers. Yep, petals were the messengers. Priests believed that Tlaloc, and sometimes his whole divine family of rain deities, because apparently even gods can't handle the job alone, used floral behavior as a language. It wasn't just superstition. Each flower was selected based on a long, often confusing logic of sacred numbers, agricultural cycles, and straight-up vibes. Want to know if a storm is coming? Ask the petal, or more accurately, ask the priest to ask the petal. In one codex illustration, a priest is shown gently brushing a flower with a feather fan, noting how it moves. If it turns east, favorable weather. If it quivers, maybe lightning. If it wilts midday, uh-oh. It sounds poetic, right? But in a society where a bad rainy season could collapse entire food supplies, this poetry was deadly serious. Their calendar relied on precision. Rain needed to arrive at the right time and stop at the right time. Flowers blooming too early or too late weren't just gardening mishaps. They were red flags from the gods, or worse, misread signs that could lead to wrong sacrifices or disastrous planting decisions. Some historians argue whether this flower reading was religious divination or observational science cloaked in spirituality. There's compelling evidence both ways. For example, Aztec records do mention tracking wind direction, air pressure, and even temperature shifts by using how flowers opened or closed over the course of a day, like a natural barometer made of petals. So maybe they weren't just being mystical. Maybe they were incredibly observant. Or maybe both. Ancient science in a feathered hat dress. Of course, there were always skeptics, even within the priesthood. Some high-ranking nobles began to argue that relying on petals was too unreliable. Flowers can be misleading after all, like that one friend who always says, "I'm 5 minutes away," and shows up half an hour later. You lean in closer to the shrine, and for a moment, it feels like the carved eyes of Tlaloc shift ever so slightly, just enough to make you wonder if your imagination has a sense of humor. Nearby, a pile of fresh flowers lies in a bowl of obsidian. You recognize some from earlier: Xochitl, Tlilxochitl, even a few with petal patterns that resemble tiny flames. A breeze stirs them, and you swear they lift slightly, like they're sighing, or maybe stretching after a long nap. You reach out, and your fingers brush against a petal warm from candlelight. It twitches. Totally normal. Definitely not haunted. Still, you step back. This place, this moment, it's not meant for casual interference. The Aztecs believed the gods were always watching, always listening, especially near places like this. To misread a flower was to misread the future. Some priests fasted for days before consulting the garden. Others claimed their dreams turned into petal-shaped visions, each bloom whispering the next day's weather in riddles. Here's a weird footnote for you. According to one 16th century Spanish friar, there was a priest who insisted he could taste the future by chewing specific flowers. Nobody really knows if that's metaphor or if the guy just had a really strange tongue. Scholars still debate whether this was ritual, hallucination, or just a dude trying to impress his congregation. Still, you have to admire the commitment. Meanwhile, you struggle to taste the difference between oat milk and almond milk. He's out here sampling destiny. As the wind shifts again, a pair of torches flicker outside the shrine. The flames twist sideways, and the smoke wafts upward, curling above the flowers. The scent changes with it, sweeter now, touched with something peppery and green. Rain is coming, you can smell it. And the flowers can too. The petals begin to move, not much, just enough that you notice a synchronized sway, as if a secret rhythm has been whispered through the soil. They lean toward the east. And that's when you realize they're pointing toward the mountains. You remember reading somewhere, maybe in a half-watched documentary or a bored late-night scroll, that Tlaloc's temples were often built near sacred peaks. The idea was that mountains held water in their bellies, like pregnant gods waiting to give birth to rivers. And here, under the eyes of stone, in a garden that speaks in colors and motion, the flowers seem to agree. You whisper, though you don't know why. "I think it's going to rain tomorrow." A single petal breaks loose and drifts toward the shrine. Tlaloc, it seems, has heard you. You step away from the shrine, and the air feels thicker now, charged, like the breath before a sigh. The moon is still high, but there's a strange color to it, almost golden. Maybe it's the incense still curling into the sky behind you, or maybe the gods are turning the light warmer to hint at what's to come. You walk along a narrow stone path flanked by flower beds, each one brimming with more blooms than your average botanical garden. But these aren't laid out for beauty. They're arranged like a code, rows and clusters forming sacred geometry. You catch sight of a five-pointed pattern, a pentagram of flowers the color of blood oranges, and realize the layout echoes a glyph you saw once in a museum. This isn't just a garden, it's a contract, a soft, perfumed negotiation between earth and sky. The Aztecs believed that rain could be summoned, but only if the right tribute was given. And sometimes that tribute came in the form of flowers. At first it sounds sweet, doesn't it? Like the gods had a floral delivery service. But then you remember what those flowers stood in for. Blood, breath, life. Because when the rain didn't come, when the flowers bloomed wrong, or too late, or not at all, something else had to be offered. You pause in front of a cluster of yellow blossoms shaped like little suns. Kempo al Xochitl, marigolds, yes, but with a spiritual weight the modern version has long forgotten. These were guideposts for the dead, sure, but also signs, barometers of divine approval. If they bloomed early, it was a blessing. If they bloomed too fast, an omen. Historical accounts from early Spanish chroniclers mentioned entire temples built around rain rituals. Priests would cultivate sacred gardens, tend them daily, and wait for the signs. But when the omens turned dark, when the blossoms curled inward or drooped under clear skies, things took a harsher turn. Here's where the story gets thorny. You hear the soft creak of wooden scaffolds overhead, and above you, shapes drift in and out of the fog. Effigies, maybe. You can't quite tell. But you remember reading that some rituals required flowers to be arranged beside bowls of pulque or on platforms smeared with red pigment. A visual metaphor, perhaps? Or a grim prelude? See, in Aztec cosmology, rain wasn't a free gift. It was a transaction. And when flowers weren't enough to pay the price, well, you don't need that bedtime story spelled out. But here's something that might surprise you. Not every ritual was bloody. Some ceremonies were wholly botanical. Offerings of thousands of flowers arranged on floating rafts, called chinampas, and sent drifting down sacred canals. The idea was to charm Tlaloc with beauty, to please his senses and convince him to spill the clouds. A historian once called it floral diplomacy. Another said it was begging with petals. And yet, the flowers weren't just decorative. They were the message. A single wilting stem in a sacred bouquet could undo an entire rite. Some Aztec priests spent years learning how to read these signs, apprenticed to elder seers who taught them how to detect not just bloom or scent, but timing, orientation, even the angle of sunlight on petal edges. One chronicler even suggested that flowers were grown in cycles matched to planetary movements. Others think that's a stretch. Or maybe it's just the kind of stretch you make when your weather app is divine wrath and your drought insurance is a field of Sochit. You pause beside a low altar made of earth and stone. A few flowers rest there, wrapped in woven leaves like tiny scrolls. One is half unfurled, its color faded at the edges, as if it aged mid-sentence. It makes you think, what did it feel like in those ancient gardens when the signs were wrong? When the rain didn't come, even after the most carefully planned offerings? What kind of fear coils through a city when the clouds stay silent? The Aztecs had a word for this uncertainty, tlazoli, a kind of cosmic disorder when the balance of nature was disturbed. It was the opposite of harmony, and flowers could sometimes warn of its approach. You look around. Suddenly, all these blooms seem less like decorations and more like blinking lights on a control panel, each one signaling a system far more complex than you can understand. There's one flower that catches your eye, a rare pink variety with a petal shaped like a hook. You don't remember seeing it in the earlier beds. It leans slightly to the left, trembling as though holding its breath. According to one old legend, these only bloom before a storm that has been earned, a blessing won through proper ritual. You wonder if this night has earned one. As you turn, the wind picks up again, and a soft rattle moves through the garden. Not the hard clatter of dry leaves, but the whispering rustle of living plants acknowledging something larger than themselves. And somewhere nearby, you hear it. One single drop. Then two. Not enough to be a rain yet, just a tease. But the petals quiver. The flowers are listening. And so are you. The first drop slides down the curve of a wide, waxy leaf beside you, sparkling in the dim light like liquid starlight. You exhale softly. Maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe the flowers did know. You follow a narrow stone path deeper into the garden, where the air feels warmer, closer. The breeze carries a faint hum, not a sound exactly, more a vibration in your bones, like the garden itself is stretching awake. Then you see it. A flash of iridescent green and blue darts through the air, a hummingbird. Tiny, weightless, fast as a spark. It hovers before a red blossom, wings a blur, beak dipping into the heart of the flower. Another flash, another sip. Then it zips toward the next cluster of blooms in a pattern that seems almost deliberate. And maybe it is. Among the Aztecs, hummingbirds weren't just charming little pollinators, they were sacred messengers, carriers of sunlight and omens, warriors reborn as shimmering birds. The god Huitzilopochtli himself was often associated with them, a being of the sun born of a miraculous mother who led his people south. But here, in this garden, the hummingbirds were also weather prophets. It sounds fanciful, tiny birds predicting storms. But think about it. These creatures sense shifts in air pressure, in the availability of nectar, in the flowering cycles tied to rainfall. Priests watched their movements carefully, where they flew, what they fed on, even when they vanished. Hummingbirds disappearing too soon could mean drought. Appearing in mass before the rainy season meant water was coming. One codex shows a priest seated beneath an arch of flowers, eyes trained not on the sky, but on a blur of wings. Observing the birds was a ritual in itself, slow, patient, reverent. You pause and do the same. The hummingbird before you hovers again, then zips upward in a spiral, faster than your eye can follow. It's gone for a breathless second, then returns to a cluster of yellow flowers, huitzilin blossoms, named for the bird itself. You wonder, is it responding to scent, to the pull of nectar, or something deeper, something old and unseen? Scholars still debate this part of the lore. Some argue that priests simply observed seasonal migration patterns. Others believe they interpreted subtle behavioral shifts as divine signs. After all, the Aztec calendar was a complex dance of solar, lunar, and agricultural cycles, of which birds and flowers were integral parts. And yet, there are stranger claims. A 17th-century friar recorded the tale of a priest who could call hummingbirds to specific flowers through whispered chants. Is it true, or a pious exaggeration designed to impress skeptical Spaniards? Historians can't agree, but as you watch this particular hummingbird dip and hover, you have to admit, it feels magical enough. You follow the bird deeper into the garden, past rows of floating flower beds, chinampas, that drift gently on the dark water. Yes, actual flower beds, floating like rafts. The Aztecs perfected this method, creating artificial islands for crops and blooms alike. And they didn't just grow food here, they grew offerings, living prayers. Petals mirrored on still water, blooms reflected like stars in an inverted sky. And among them, hummingbirds danced. It was said that on certain feast days, entire flocks of these jeweled creatures would appear in the gardens, drawn by the profusion of blossoms. Priests would interpret the pattern of their flight, the frequency of their visits. One bird circling thrice around a sacred bloom? Good omen. A sudden mass departure? Trouble. You pause at the edge of a floating bed and kneel. The scent of wet earth and crushed petals rises around you. The water beneath reflects your face, framed in flowers. A small, sharp chirp startles you. The hummingbird returns, hovering inches from your nose. Its eyes, tiny black beads, meet yours for a suspended moment. Then it shoots upward in a spiral once more and disappears into the night. You exhale, a laugh caught in your throat. If that was an omen, it felt hopeful. You remember something else, a line from a dusty old journal. When the flowers bloom true and the hummingbirds sing clear, the rain shall follow swiftly. You look around. The flowers are open wide now, petals gleaming with a faint sheen of moisture. The air tastes electric, rich with the promise of rain. And yet, a voice in the back of your mind whispers caution. For not all omens are easy to read, And sometimes, even the brightest wings can bring mixed messages. Historians still debate whether the Aztecs truly relied on these signs for agricultural planning, or whether they served more as spiritual reassurance, a way to anchor hope in the uncertain rhythms of nature. The truth is likely somewhere in between. The culture so attuned to the land could not help but notice its smallest shifts. And you, now, are part of that ancient conversation. A final flicker of green and blue passes over your shoulder. You turn, eyes following the fading blur of wings, and smile. Rain is coming. The flowers know, the hummingbirds know, and maybe, now, so do you. The path winds on, taking you through a quieter part of the garden now. Here, the air grows thicker, perfumed with the sharp, earthy scent of marigolds, Flor de Muerte, the flower of death. You know marigolds. You've seen them on altars, in markets, during Day of the Dead festivals. Bright, brassy, impossible to ignore. But here, their orange and gold blooms seem to glow from within, as if they're lit by an unseen sun. You pause beside a large stone basin filled with petals, their edges already kissed with dew. The Aztecs believed marigolds weren't just flowers for the dead. They were also sensitive instruments of fate. The way they bloomed, or refused to, could predict not only rain, but life and death itself. And here's where it gets strange. Priests claimed that the angle of a marigold's tilt could tell them whether the rainy season would bring abundance or disaster. A flower leaning toward the east suggested a gentle rain. One tilting south meant storms and floods. If it faced west, the rain would be late, sparse, troublesome. But a marigold turning its head downward? That was the worst sign of all. A harbinger of famine, sickness, or worse. You eye the nearest bloom. It leans ever so slightly toward the east. You let out a breath you didn't know you were holding. Scholars still argue about whether this was grounded in observation or superstition. After all, marigolds do respond to sunlight, temperature, even barometric pressure. It's possible that over generations, Aztec gardeners noticed consistent patterns. Or maybe it was something deeper, a ritual reading layered with metaphor and meaning. Either way, when the marigold spoke, people listened. You run your fingers gently along the edge of a petal, soft, almost velvety. The scent clings to your skin, bitter, bright, alive. A soft chime draws your attention. A wind bell sways nearby, strung with jade beads and tiny feathers. It sounds light, airy, a whisper rather than a song. In the distance, you spot a pair of figures moving slowly between the flower beds. Gardeners or perhaps priests, though their shapes blur in the growing mist. They move with reverence, pausing at each cluster of blooms, as if in conversation with them. And then you notice something odd. One patch of marigolds near the path is ringed with small obsidian stones, protective perhaps, or symbolic. But the flowers within the ring lean in different directions, creating a jagged spiral pattern. A deliberate arrangement or a warning? There's an old story about this. One year, when marigolds formed a spiral instead of a uniform tilt, the rains came too hard. Crops drowned, rivers swelled, villages were lost. The priests took it as a sign that Tlaloc's hunger had not been properly satisfied. Some blamed faulty offerings, others whispered of a forgotten debt between mortals and gods. You step carefully around the spiral, unwilling to test your luck. Nearby, another cluster of marigolds stands tall and straight, their faces open wide to the sky. You smile. If the flowers could speak, they'd surely have some choice words about all this human fretting. Just water us, they'd say. The rest will sort itself out. And yet, the garden hums with a deeper knowing. You feel it in your bones. Here's a curious fact. Some Aztec texts describe certain flowers, especially marigolds, as having a double life. They belonged equally to the world of the living and the dead. In this way, they served as bridges, not just between life and death, but between earth and sky, between drought and rain. One chronicler even claimed that marigolds could attract spirits of rain themselves, drawing them down to nourish the land. How literal was this belief? No one knows for certain, but on nights like this, in gardens like this, it doesn't seem so far-fetched. You crouch beside a low wall where a few stray petals have fallen. You gather one, hold it up. The wind catches it, lifts it from your palm. It drifts upward, caught in the dance between earth and air. And just as it vanishes into the mist, you hear a low, distant rumble. Not thunder, at least not yet, but a promise. The marigolds sway in unison. A smile tugs at the corner of your mouth. You're beginning to understand why the Aztecs read these flowers so closely. In a world where survival hinged on the moods of the sky, petals were not just symbols, they were lifelines. You rise and move on, the scent of marigolds lingering like a whispered secret. Behind you, the spiral of flowers stands silent, watching, waiting. The garden seems deeper now, as if you've slipped beneath a surface you didn't know existed. The path narrows, lined with taller plants, spiny stalks, thick leaves, blossoms the size of dinner plates. You trail your fingers along the stone walls, their surfaces slick with the first hints of condensation. It's getting closer. You duck beneath an arch woven with vines and feathers and step into a clearing you didn't expect. Here, the flowers grow in perfect circles, concentric rings spiraling out from a low stone altar at the center. The blooms shimmer in pale light, silvered by dew. You stand still. There's a feeling here, like entering a room where a conversation has just stopped. A small plaque, ancient and cracked, sits at the base of the altar. The glyphs are faint, but you remember enough from your late-night history rabbit holes to recognize the symbol for At, water. This is a rain altar, and this is the heart of the garden. You move closer, careful not to disturb the flowers. Each ring features different species, selected not for beauty, but for their supposed sensitivity to the rain cycle. Closest to the altar, white tsiwakzi flowers, said to bloom only after a drought breaks. Next ring, blue xochitl, linked to the cool rains of early summer. Beyond that, red tlachtchichinoli, a more controversial inclusion. Some scholars believe it was associated with destructive floods. Others argue it simply symbolized the intensity of the storm cycle. And at the outermost ring, violet quetzalcoatl, the plant we know today as poinsettia. Yes, that poinsettia. The Aztecs used it not as a Christmas decoration, but as a barometer of late-season rains. If its bracts turned deep crimson too soon, it was taken as a warning of out-of-season storms. You smile, thinking of all the office lobbies that unknowingly house ancient weather predictors every December. And here's something even stranger. According to one fragment of the Codex Borgia, priests sometimes performed what they called flower clock readings at altars like this. They would observe the rate at which certain blooms open or close over the course of a night, correlating this with subtle shifts in temperature and humidity. Essentially, they used flowers as living meteorological instruments. Sounds brilliant, or a little bonkers. Depends who you ask. Historians are still debating whether this practice was widespread or limited to elite priesthoods. Some argue it was more ceremonial than practical, an elaborate ritual designed to impress the populace and reaffirm the priest's connection to the divine. But here's the thing, the Aztecs were no fools. They built floating farms, engineered massive aqueducts, tracked Venus with greater precision than many Europeans of their time. It's entirely possible they observed patterns modern science would later quantify. You kneel at the edge of the inner ring. The white tsiwakli flowers are still closed, their pale faces cupped tight, waiting, listening. You place your hand on the cool stone of the altar. A sudden gust stirs the garden. The rings of flowers ripple outward like a breath. And then, behind you, a voice. Low, calm, measured. You watch them too. You turn slowly. An old man stands at the edge of the clearing, wrapped in a plain cloak. His hair is silver, his eyes sharp as obsidian. He smiles, not unkindly. "This is a good night for learning," he says. You open your mouth, but he lifts a hand. No need for words. He moves into the clearing with practiced grace, as if this space belongs to him, or he to it. He gestures toward the rings. "Do you know the order?" You nod, sort of. He smiles again. "Good, few remember." He kneels beside the poinsettias, fingers brushing their leaves. "They warned us once," he murmurs. "A season when the rains came too soon, crops drowned, many suffered." He looks up, eyes gleaming. "The flowers are not perfect," he says, "but they see what we do not." You glance back at the rings. The blooms seem expectant. The man rises. "Watch the center," he says, and steps back. You focus on the white Cihuactli. Minutes pass. The garden hushes. Even the insects seem to pause. And then, slowly, impossibly, the first petal stirs. It peels back, trembling. Another follows. The bloom begins to open, luminous in the dim light. A breath escapes you. The man's voice is soft behind you. It begins. And as if on cue, a low roll of thunder rumbles through the air. You glance upward. The sky, once scattered with stars, is now veiled in thickening clouds. The flowers knew. Of course they knew. You turn to speak, but the clearing is empty. No sign of the old man. You blink, heart racing just a little. Perhaps a trick of the garden. Or perhaps not. The thunder rolls again, closer now. A drop lands on your cheek, another on your hand. You smile, shake your head. The rain is coming. The flowers have spoken. And tonight, you are ready to listen. The first drops tap against the leaves, soft as whispered secrets. You tilt your head back, eyes tracing the shifting clouds. The night sky seems lower now, pressing close, heavy with the promise of release. Around you, the flowers sway, some opening wider, others curling inward as if to shield their delicate centers. You can almost hear them exhale. And then the rain begins in earnest. Not a downpour, not yet, just a steady patter, like fingers drumming on a drum skin. The petals catch the drops, cradling them for a breath before letting them fall to the earth below. You walk slowly around the altar, raindrops trailing down your arms. The garden feels alive, humming with unseen energy. It's hard not to feel part of it, as if your breath and heartbeat are syncing with some ancient rhythm. Another gust of wind stirs the air, and you spot something new, strips of paper fluttering from the branches overhead. They're covered in glyphs and symbols, a mottle, bark paper once used for sacred texts and rituals. You remember reading that during certain rain ceremonies, these papers were inscribed with prayers and tied to trees. As the rain soaked the paper, the words were believed to be released into the air, carried to the gods. You reach out, fingers brushing one of the damp strips. The ink is already running, the characters bleeding into abstract shapes. The message is flying now. Somewhere nearby, a low chant begins, soft, almost a murmur. You can't see the singers, but their voices weave through the garden, rising and falling with the rain. Another curious fact: the Aztecs didn't just rely on flowers and offerings to predict rain. They also listened to sounds, bird calls, frog songs, even the timbre of the wind through certain plants. The entire garden was a living sensor array, tuned to the moods of the sky. You pause near a patch of water lilies in a shallow pool. Their broad leaves are dotted with raindrops, each one a tiny lens capturing the shimmering world above. Water lilies were another subtle instrument. In some regions, their blooming patterns were closely watched. An early bloom could signal an early rainy season. Too early, and it was a cause for concern. You kneel by the pool, watching as the rain dimples the surface. The reflections waver, distort, then clear again. It's hypnotic. You could stay here for hours, letting the rhythm pull you deeper. But the chant grows louder, drawing you onward. You follow the sound to another clearing, this one surrounded by tall, slender trees. Their trunks are hung with more paper strips, feathers, and garlands of flowers. At the center stands a group of figures, gardeners, priests, or perhaps both, clad in simple woven garments. They move slowly, gracefully, arms lifting in time with the chant. In their hands, small bundles of flowers bound with reeds. You watch as one figure steps forward, unwrapping them with reverence. Inside, a mix of marigolds, lilies, and a single tlachicinoli bloom. The figure places the flowers at the base of a stone carving, an ancient face with wide staring eyes and a mouth frozen mid-roar. It's Tlaloc, another offering, another prayer. And here's where the line between science and faith blurs completely. Historians argue about how much the Aztecs truly believed in the predictive power of flowers versus their symbolic role. Some suggest the rituals were a form of psychological preparation, a way to create a sense of agency in the face of nature's chaos. Others insist the priests possessed a deep empirical understanding, cloaked in ritual to preserve its sacredness. You suspect both are true. Humans are endlessly inventive when it comes to reading the world and endlessly prone to seeking meaning in its patterns. You step closer to the group, careful not to intrude. One of the figures glances your way and offers a small nod, as if inviting you to witness. You do. The chant shifts, becoming softer now, almost a lullaby. The rain thickens, falling in silver sheets that blur the edges of the garden. The flowers gleam, petals heavy with moisture. A single frog croaks from somewhere nearby, a sound the Aztecs would have considered a powerful omen of abundance. You smile. The garden is singing back. You close your eyes, letting the sounds wash over you. Rain, chant, frog, wind. The heartbeat of a living world. And beneath it all, the flowers, watching, whispering, weaving their silent messages through root and stem and bloom. You open your eyes. The figures are gone, vanished into the mist and rain. Only the offerings remain. You feel a strange certainty now, as if the garden itself has shared some secret truth with you. The rain is here. The flowers have spoken. And for tonight at least, the balance is restored. You turn, following the winding path once more, deeper into the rain-drenched heart of the garden. The journey is not over yet. The rain has settled now into a steady rhythm, a gentle cascade that fills the garden with liquid music. You walk beneath the canopy of leaves and vines, each step a soft splash on the saturated path. The air is thick with the mingled sense of wet earth, crushed petals, and green things breathing deep. You can't help but smile. It's as though the entire garden is exhaling. Ahead, the path forks. One way leads toward the floating beds again, where the chinampas drift beneath their shivering veils of rain. The other, narrow, half overgrown, slips between towering stalks of maize and amaranth. You take the second path. Maize, the lifeblood of the Aztec world. Without rain, there was no maize. Without maize, there was no life. It's no wonder the Aztecs were so attuned to every sign the flowers offered. A mistimed planting or a failed harvest could mean hunger for thousands. And here's a curious thing. Aztec farmers would often plant certain flowers among their crops, not just for aesthetics or pollination, but as living weather indicators. Morning glories, for instance, were believed to react quickly to shifts in humidity, closing before storms or refusing to open if drought loomed. You pause beside a cluster of these bright blue trumpets. They are closed now, their delicate petals furled tight, a confirmation as if you needed more. Beyond them, the maze stands tall, its leaves whispering secrets you can almost understand. You move on, the path narrowing further until it opens into a small glade ringed with cempasúchil, the marigolds again, but here they grow wilder, less regimented. Their golden faces bob in the rain, vibrant against the gray sky. At the center of the glade stands another figure, this time unmistakably a priest. Robes of deep indigo, fringed with jade beads, arms raised to the heavens. You freeze, not wanting to intrude. But the priest lowers his arms and gestures for you to approach. You step forward, heart pounding just a little. Glazol kamati, he says, thank you. His voice is soft, worn by years of ritual. He points to the marigolds. They speak tonight, he says. Would you hear them? You nod. He kneels, brushing rain from a large flat stone. Upon it rests a circular arrangement of blooms, marigolds, lilies, hummingbird flowers, even tiny cactus blossoms, each placed with precision. This is the reading circle, he explains, an old practice, not for divination, but for listening. You crouch beside him, fascinated. He gestures to the outermost ring. These show the outer winds, the storms that may come from afar. His fingers trace inward. Here, the heart winds, rains born of the earth's own longing. At the center, a single white bloom. And here, the breath of Tlaloc. You study the flowers. Subtle shifts catch your eye. A petal torn here, a tilt there, a bead of water trembling on one fragile edge. The priest smiles. You see it. And oddly, you do. Not in any literal sense, but as a pattern, a rhythm. The flowers respond to the unseen currents swirling through the air and soil. They are both signal and story. It's no wonder the priests read them so closely, you think. In a world of uncertainty, even the smallest signs matter. There's a scholarly debate about this practice, of course. Some dismiss it as pure symbolism, a poetic metaphor rather than a practical tool. Others argue that, embedded within the ritual, there lay a deep observational wisdom. After all, flowers do react to microclimatic changes. Perhaps the priests, through centuries of careful watching, learned to read these shifts in ways we're only beginning to rediscover. You sit in silence beside the priest, rain soaking your clothes, breath mingling with the mist. Finally, he speaks again. The rains will be kind this season. You smile. The flowers told you. He chuckles. The flowers told us. He rises, gathering the blooms with gentle hands. One marigold he offers to you. You accept it with a quiet thank you. The priest bows slightly. Walk well, he says, then turns and disappears into the rain-veiled trees. You sit for a moment longer, turning the marigold between your fingers. Its petals are warm despite the cool air. You rise and follow the path once more, marigold in hand. The rain continues, soft and steady, a lullaby for the earth. And you? You feel lighter somehow, as if you've been let in on a secret whispered through root and petal and rain. The garden hums around you, alive with unseen voices. You walk on. You follow the winding path deeper into the rain-drenched garden, the marigold still warm in your hand. Each step feels more deliberate now, as if the garden itself is guiding you, urging you to see, to notice, to listen. The air is thick with the smell of wet foliage and blooming things. Rain seeps into the soil, stirring up an earthy aroma that seems to root you to the ground. Overhead, the trees sway and whisper, leaves glistening like emerald stars. Ahead, the path opens onto a stone bridge arcing over a narrow canal. The water below runs dark and swift, flecked with floating petals and tiny ripples from the falling rain. You pause on the bridge, watching the currents twist and spiral. For a moment, you imagine the rain as a message, each drop a word, each ripple a reply. It's a poetic thought, but not so far removed from Aztec belief. Here's something curious. The Aztecs often described rain as a form of divine speech. Each storm was seen as a dialogue between the earth and the gods, mediated by wind and water. Flowers, in turn, were thought to be the earth's response, a kind of floral language. Some scholars argue that this wasn't merely poetic metaphor, but reflected a genuine philosophy of ecological interconnectedness. To the Aztecs, nature wasn't just a resource, it was a partner in an ongoing conversation. You lean on the bridge's wet stone rail, thinking about this. The idea of a living, speaking world feels oddly comforting, especially tonight, with the rain so steady, so sure. A flash of movement catches your eye. Across the canal, a small shrine nestles beneath a cluster of flowering trees. It's simple. A stone platform, a few offerings, garlands of soaked marigolds hanging from low branches. Drawn by curiosity, you cross the bridge and approach. The shrine is dedicated to Chalchihuitlicue, goddess of rivers, lakes, and streams. Her name means she of the jade skirt, and her image often depicts her with water pouring from her hands. You kneel before the shrine, placing your marigold among the offerings. The petals are beginning to wilt now, edges curling inward, a reminder of the fleeting nature of all things. Above you, the trees shiver. Drops fall in a steady rhythm, drumming against the stone. And here's a stranger detail. In some regions, it was believed that certain trees could sense the moods of rain deities. If a tree wept sap too soon or failed to blossom at the proper time, it was seen as a warning or a plea for ritual correction. Modern botanists might call this coincidence or stress response, but the line between observation and reverence was thin here. The garden taught its lessons subtly, and those who listened learned to read them. You sit back on your heels, eyes closed, listening. The rain is softer now, a hush more than a song. And then, faintly, you hear it. Another voice beneath the patter. A low, rhythmic chant, distant yet distinct. You rise, following the sound through a narrow corridor of flowering shrubs. The path twists and narrows until you emerge into a small amphitheater of stone and earth. There, beneath a woven canopy, a circle of figures chants in low, resonant tones. Before them burns a small flame, sheltered from the rain. Around the flame are bowls of water and bundles of flowers, offerings, instruments, perhaps both. You linger at the edge, watching. One figure steps forward, lifting a shallow bowl filled with rainwater. He dips a marigold into it, letting the petals drink. Then, with a practiced motion, he flings the water upward. The droplets catch the dim light, scattering like stars. The chant shifts, rising. You realize this is a ritual not of prediction, but of gratitude. The rains have come, the earth is drinking, the flowers bloom in answer. And you, an outsider, are somehow part of this moment now, woven into the cycle of giving and receiving. The figure with the bowl turns, eyes meeting yours. He nods once, as if acknowledging your presence, your part in this ancient exchange. You bow slightly in return. The chant continues, a low pulse through the mist. You step back, leaving the circle undisturbed, and find yourself once more beneath the open sky. The rain is fading now, a gentle drizzle softening the edges of the world. The garden gleams, every leaf and petal kissed with silver. You breathe deep, the scent of wet flowers filling your lungs. The marigolds have spoken, the rains have answered, and the dance between earth and sky continues. You walk on, the path ahead lit by the soft glow of rain-washed blooms. The garden feels different now, as if it has shed a layer of tension. The rain has softened to a misty veil, a gentle caress against your skin. Each leaf you pass holds a perfect bead of water, trembling like a tiny world unto itself. You wander without thought, letting the garden guide you. The path rises slightly, leading toward a stone terrace overlooking the Chinampas. From this height, the floating fields gleam under the wet sky, their dark soil and green shoots glistening like polished jade. You lean against the terrace's edge, gaze drifting across the shimmering expanse. There's a curious fact that comes to mind. During the height of the Aztec Empire, records suggest that priests and farmers sometimes conducted joint rituals here, blending empirical observation with sacred rites. They would chart bloom patterns, monitor insect behavior, and even taste the rainwater, believing its flavor carried signs of its origin and future. Scholars still debate this practice. Some claim it was pure ceremony, a theatrical affirmation of cosmic order. Others argue that beneath the ritual lay a sophisticated form of environmental monitoring, passed down through generations. You smile. Perhaps both views are true, woven together like the reeds that form the Chinampas themselves. A faint breeze stirs the terrace, carrying the scent of wet stone and wildflowers. You close your eyes, breathing it in. A soft voice breaks the quiet. You see them differently now. You turn. The old man from the clearing stands nearby, rain-slicked cloak draped over one shoulder. His eyes sparkle with quiet amusement. You offer a rueful smile. "I think I do." He steps beside you, gazing out over the fields. "The flowers do not lie," he says, "but they do not speak plainly either." You nod. That much is clear. "For those who listen," he continues, "they reveal more than weather. They teach patience, attention, humility." He gestures toward the Chinampas. "The rains will nourish the crops, but more than that, they remind us we are part of this cycle, not its masters." You watch the water shimmer below, ripples chasing one another across its surface. "And when the flowers fade," you ask. He smiles. "Then we thank them, and we watch again." A simple truth, yet profound. He turns to you. "Come." You follow him along a narrow path bordered by tall grasses. The air hums with life, crickets, frogs, the distant call of a night bird. The path ends at a small pavilion, its roof woven from reeds and branches. Inside, a circle of low cushions surrounds a stone basin filled with rainwater. Floating within, an intricate pattern of blooms, marigolds, lilies, tiny orchids. The old man gestures for you to sit. You do, settling onto a cushion damp with dew. He speaks softly. "This is the watching place. Here we observe, not to predict, but to remember." He lifts a small wooden cup, dips it into the basin, and offers it to you. You hesitate, then accept. The water is cool, its surface touched with the faintest scent of flowers. You drink. It tastes of earth and sky, of stone and leaf, a fleeting communion with the garden's heart. The old man smiles. Now you carry its voice. You sit in silence, the weight of the moment sinking deep. Time seems to blur. The rain eases to a fine mist, then ceases altogether. The garden holds its breath. Petals drift in the basin. Stars emerge overhead, reflected in the water's still surface. The old man rises. "You will remember," he says. Not a question. You nod. He bows slightly, then steps into the shadows beyond the pavilion. You remain seated, watching the flowers float. They tell no fortune, offer no command. They simply are, silent witnesses to a world forever in motion. You stand at last, body relaxed, mind clear. The path back feels different now. Each stone, each blossom, familiar yet newly seen. As you walk, the garden seems to fade, not vanish, but soften, as though slipping into the edges of a dream. By the time you reach the gate, dawn's first light brushes the sky. You pause, looking back one last time. The flowers remain, watching, whispering, waiting. You step into the new day, carrying their quiet wisdom with you. Now, slow your breath. Let your body grow heavy, sinking into the softness beneath you. The rain has passed, leaving the garden glistening and still. Petals drift on silver pools. The air is rich with the scent of earth in bloom. You walk once more beneath the arching vines. Each step is lighter now, as though the earth itself carries you. Ahead, a bed of soft moss waits, bathed in the pale glow of dawn. You lie down, cradled by the gentle curve of the earth. Above you, branches sway in a silent rhythm. Leaves shimmer, catching the first rays of light. The flowers watch, serene and knowing. You breathe in their quiet song. And as your eyes grow heavy, their whispers fade to a gentle hum. The garden holds you. The rain remembers, and sleep is near.